Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. We'd like to thank our sponsor, iZotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At iZotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to iZotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is iZotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
A large part of what I love to do, we drive around LA at certain times of day, in certain light, and look at the landscape, and it's so inspiring. So that's always something that I really just hits me deeply, you know?
What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, April 10th. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm very excited today to share my conversation with my good friend, Todd Cole. Todd Cole's a photographer, a filmmaker, storyteller. You'll hear in an interview, but I remember meeting Todd years and years ago through Kate and Laura Malevi, who have a fashion brand called Rodarte that was like friends of friends, and we were, No Age was playing a lot of music and doing weird art stuff and doing soundtracky things, and we got teamed up with Todd to do a soundtrack for a short film that he did for a Rodarte catalog type short film thing that I think he shot at SpaceX. And this would have been, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And it was still that kind of thing, like, what is this Elon Musk doing out there near LAX? Did you know there's a guy who has something to do with PayPal that's making a spaceship company? So we didn't go to the shoot to SpaceX, but I remember talking to Todd afterwards and just seeing all the footage he got of being inside the SpaceX sort of hangars, or I don't think it's really a factory, but some kind of like testing facility where they put things together in rockets and space travel, and it was very sci-fi and kind of industrial in a cool way. So that's when I first met Todd, was working on that project, and we created this soundtrack to go to that film. And then it was eventually that soundtrack was released as part of this cool like art subscription service called The Thing that was based out of San Francisco, and where Kate and Laura and Todd put together this really cool package of a 12-inch record that was our soundtrack to the short film. And all very cool stuff, way cooler than I am or will ever be. But hanging out next to cool people was something that definitely happened around that time with No Age and things we got to do. And I was cool by proxy. I don't know if I counted myself as one of the cool people, but it felt cool at the time. And I think we even did a live score thing at the Red Cat. For something, I don't know. It definitely blends together, and I was right around, very close to the time when I was to be ending my drinking career and starting a new chapter of my life. So there's a lot of things going on, and I don't remember a lot of them, but that was part of it. So knowing Todd, as a purveyor of cool things and cool images, I think he shot some photos for us for our second album for Sub Pop, Everything in Between. He shot the press photos for that again, which is a funny thing to have to do. We actually get to employ cool creatives and ask friends to shoot photos of us that the record label would pay for. So that felt cool. I remember it was fun working with Todd on the project and then on the soundtrack project, and then it was like, cool, hey, we can kind of return the favor and he should shoot these photos for us. So we like went downtown and into the riverbed, but I picked out a weird sweater for myself. Again, just layers and layers of self-consciousness. Of all things, just why am I wearing this sweater? I don't know. I don't want to, just trying desperately to hang into this insane roller coaster ride of doing crazy band things, and just really feeling like okay, well, I don't know what's happening here, but just try to not look stupid every day. Every day I walk out of my house and just like, oh, don't stick my foot in my mouth or don't look stupid. But inevitably I would, and through just the just the act of being a drunk 20-year-old who played guitar and just had fun making noise and not really caring about all the other stuff, I eventually would just do something stupid or say something stupid or do something. I remember being so hungover one time in England. We were on tour there and we had to do a photo shoot for something. And again, I just felt so uncomfortable. Still to this day, you know what I mean? Like I don't think anybody really likes getting pictures taken of them. I think there's a little bit of an ego, sort of boost to it all. Like, hey, stand there, let me take your picture. But I just remember feeling so uncomfortable all the time, in just my own skin. And then like, oh no, the last thing I wanted was someone to take a photo of it. But at the same time, I wanted attention for the band and I wanted good things for the band and for more people to come to our shows or buy records or things that, you're sort of sold this, thing like, yeah, go out of your way and wear these funny clothes and stand around with these people and let them take photos of you, because then more people will buy tickets, to your shows or whatever. And that was, I wanted that. I wanted people to come see us and, listen to the music we were making and all the stuff we were doing. But it's, at some point it all just becomes this like shell game of like, okay, wait, why am I doing all this stuff? Like, oh, you're doing this so that you get the people to do the thing, to go to the place to do and it's just like, oh Lord. But, eventually got good at standing there and looking off, looking not at the camera or looking at the camera and just standing places for a while wearing weird clothes. But the England one, yeah, I remember just being so hungover. I feel like I looked gray. I think my skin was like reptilian at that point and just being terrible. I don't know where those photos ever turned out, but I just wanted to curl up in a ball and die. And then here I am taking a picture. So a lot of puffy, sweaty photos of me from the late aughts at the time. But Todd did not capture those. That's just in my nightmare. Those exist somewhere online or not, or maybe no one cares. That's even the best part of it all, is getting older and you realize like, oh, this stuff that I thought would haunt me forever. Like I'm the only one that remembers it. No one remembers these sweaty, gray, puffy photos. Yeah, I just chalk it up to an experience of being in my 20s. And being very fortunate that anyone cared enough to spend the time setting up lights or pointing a camera in our direction at all. At this point in my life, I could realize it was a privilege, and as I have no business complaining whatsoever. It was a weird blip in life, but anyway, that's how I met Todd, and I've been fortunate enough to stay friends with Todd all these years, and it was great to catch up with him and get to share his story here. All right, so here we go, Todd Cole. Todd, welcome to Hyphenate. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's so good to see you, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. I know. We're just catching up before the mics were rolling. You are back in Austin, but you're from Texas originally. Where did you grow up in Texas?
I grew up in Houston, and I went to college at UT in Austin.
Okay. So you were part of the keeping Austin weird when it was still weird. You were part of the weird scene of
Exactly.
That's so cool. What did you study in college? Were you doing photography then?
Oh no, I've never told you this.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing.
I studied finance, 7th degree in finance, and I went to UT to play football. So I played football at UT.
Shit. Okay.
So I did that for like 2 years, and it wasn't fun. So I stopped playing football and started going to punk shows and became much happier.
Right. I remember we talked a little bit about football and brain injuries. We talked
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Was that a big part growing up in Houston? Were you like the Friday Night Lights thing, like
Yeah,
high school
completely. I mean,
football?
it's
Okay.
if you're I was good at it, and if you're good at anything in high school, it kind of consumes you, or you just want to have any kind of identity that you in and positive support or reinforcement. And of course, if you're good at football in Texas, you get like piles of that. So I at that age, like so many people, you just want to have success at something. And anyway, so I just wanted to play for the University of Texas, and I did. And like I said, I did it for 2 years, and then I realized that I kind of like playing football, but didn't like hanging out with football players.
Did you know even in high school though, was there like an artistic sort of bend or creative sort of bend that was sort of like, was there a conflict or challenge during those years?
Not it wasn't really a conflict or a challenge, but my mom is an artist. My dad's a scientist. I I love movies and I love photography, and I really wasn't growing up in a community where that was something that was really kind of championed or whatever. So I didn't know you could go to art school. I didn't know you could go to film school. I didn't know any of that was an option because that just wasn't in the periphery of my childhood. So I just thought, well, everybody I know who has a nice house is in finance, so I'll go and play football and get a degree in finance. And then I got out of college and went to work for some stockbrokers for I don't know, maybe 6 months, and had a complete existential
Oh
meltdown.
no. Is this in New
And
York? Did you go to New
no, it
York?
was in
Oh,
Houston. I moved back to
oh
Houston, and
Lord.
it was brutal. And I just had a real talk with myself. I'm like, what do I want to do with my life, and what do I love, and what I quickly kind of zeroed in on. It's like I love movies and I love photography. And I didn't know you could go to art school, and I didn't know how you made a living as a photographer, but I knew that if you go to LA, you could be this thing called a director, and that's a real profession or career or whatever. At that point in my life, that was how I was thinking. And so I moved to LA, and I had one friend, and he was a location manager, and I called him and asked him to how do I get in the film business. He said, you can work for me and be my assistant. And so in 94 I moved to LA, and we did this movie called Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. Do you remember that movie?
Classic, of course.
It's a
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah. It's a
So
Wayne brothers early
it was a
joint.
Wayne's Brothers.
Sean
Yeah.
and Marlon, right? Kind of making a name for
Yeah.
themselves outside of Keenan's look. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it
Huge.
was bonkers. So that was my intro.
That's wild. Yeah. I mean, I just want to back up for a second. Like, I mean, definitely coming from football bros into finance bros. I mean, it's like out of the fire or out of the pan into the fire right there. That's a huge sort of bump.
Yeah, it's weird. When you're that age,
thing.
it's hard. You don't really know. I mean, you're just learning about life. You don't really know what's what. And,
No.
There's so much peer pressure or environments that kind of
Sure.
push you in certain directions, and you just have to kind of figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big sort of question. And when you say your dad was a scientist, what sort of science stuff was he doing?
He's a geologist.
Okay.
So
that's big for oil and for drilling and stuff. I imagine anything underground, they kind of need a survey done, and they hire his firm to go see what's going under the ground. That's cool. What about like the space, the space and NASA being in Houston? Did that ever enter into your life or not? Yeah, totally. It was huge, right?
It was huge. It really was, because it was down in Clear Lake, and we would go and you just tour it. But back when I was a kid, like you go there now and it's all kind of sectioned off, and you can't really. But when I was a kid, you could literally climb into the capsules. Like the Apollo capsule would be there, and you could climb in it, and they would have all the giant Saturn rockets out on the lawn, and you could just kind of roam freely among all those kind of artifacts from outer space. And I fucking loved it. It was such a big thing for me.
Yeah, I know. I went to space camp when I was in junior high, but that was in Huntsville, Alabama, where they do all that stuff. But it was just hugely fascinating. You know what I mean? It was really one of the coolest things I did as a kid. Yeah.
I mean, it was just, I don't know if you had this experience. I know I've heard other people kind of my generation talk about this, but when we were kids, you thought that by 2010 or whatever, we'd all be in like flying cars, and everything would be like white, like TH6, 38, that was what I thought the future was going to be. And slowly you kind of look around, you're like, it's really not that different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I went through, we all went through, that sort of this website, where we're surfing the web, and it was like, okay, the future's happening. Here we are. And then CD-ROM technology, like what? Digital media. And they're like, okay. And then like, wait, it's just, Just the future became a dumpster fire pretty quick, but it always felt like the cutting edge. There was a moment there, definitely. I think we're of that generation, where there was not, online culture or online media, and then went from physical media and the cell phone proliferation into whatever, we have here. But it was a change. We did go through some kind of technological revolution, but it was not the one of the Jetsons and the Stanley Kubrick sort of vacuum.
Yeah, it's more like Philip K. Dick.
Something, yeah, definitely somewhere, and then politically, and rise of fascism and everything else is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
But the move to LA. And photography wasn't even part of it. You were going for more as within film and movies, and wanted to look at that. Okay, so how does that happen?
Well, when I got out of college, I started just taking pictures around Houston and trying to teach myself photography. And then I was always learning filmmaking and photography kind of simultaneously. And I worked on a couple of movies as an assistant location manager and then a location manager, and kind of learned the film business. But then I learned really quickly, like, unless you're a writer, director, producer, a creative in it, it's just really hard work, and it's not creative. Yeah. So
it's that feeling. 90% of people on a film set are union crew guys. And God bless them, and they're great, and they need to be there. But in terms of the guy with the beret and the artistry and the creativity, there's about 5% of the people that make all the decisions, and the rest of everybody there just is carrying shit and picking stuff up and as day laborers, more or less.
It's incredibly hard work, long, crazy hours, super stressful. So I stopped doing that, and I had a friend who worked in the music video department at Virgin Records, and I love music. Like I said, when I stopped playing football, I just started going to punk shows and
who were you seeing in Austin? What was the punk scene like in Austin at that time?
Well, Husker Du, like Bob Mould, Husker Du, like it was the early '90s, so it was, I was this close to seeing Nirvana on the Nevermind tour, but I couldn't get tickets. Mudhoney, all those kind of.
But post Scratch Acid, post the Dicks, the Big Boys, there was that early 80s sort of skate rock stuff. So it wasn't that, but it's kind of the afterburn,
Butthole Surfers,
grunge. Okay, of course, yeah. There you go. Huge part of that world.
Yeah, and South by Southwest back then was just literally you pay $25 and you could walk around Austin for whatever the number of days and just sit at the foot of Bob Mould playing like an acoustic set. It was crazy.
That's wild. That's the funny part that's kind of cut out of 1991, the year punk broke, is that Bob Mould played all of those same shows. Like he was in between Nirvana and Sonic Youth playing acoustic. And I think for whatever reason, Dave Markey or whoever, however they were doing it, were just like, fuck Bob Mould. They just didn't put him in. Like having met Bob and talked to him after, he's like, I was there. Like I played all of those festivals. I was there with the thing. I don't know what I did to piss those guys off, or I don't know what the politics were between those camps, but Bob was part of that scene and just didn't.
I don't think they knew what to do with him. Between with that period, that acoustic period, everybody's like, "Wait, what the fuck are you doing?" Workbook and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, Bob is an interesting person, interesting figure. Zelig of some sorts of really, from. I think punk and then wrestling and then dance music and then kind of legacy and then just being closeted. I mean, the whole band of Husker Du is so interesting. Both Greg or Grant and Bob being closeted, but then coming out, and then that sort of world of stuff. Like it's I'm sure there's an incredible story there.
Great American story.
Yeah. It's wild. So then coming to LA and then film world, and then how does the photography kick off? Are you're shooting for fun, shooting for friends, shooting music?
I was just kind of dead serious. I went to work at Virgin Records in the music video department with a friend of mine. I was just temping, but I walked into their the closet, and I saw that it was full of music videos. It was the '90s, and there was a Husker Du video, and there was a Dinosaur Jr. video, and it was just like, wait, they actually make videos for this, and you can put together music and photography. And so I quickly went to work for this music video director, this kind of infamous video director. This guy named Sam Bayer, who did Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah, he's a real infamous personality, but anyway,
the story I always heard about him was that like Nirvana hired him because he had the worst
Yeah,
reel.
totally.
Like they hated his
Totally.
reel and he thought it was terrible and they thought it'd be just ridiculous to hire some chump who didn't know what he was
It's
doing.
unbelievable. I
Yeah.
mean, he's still to this day, he's a really good friend of mine, but he was from Ohio. He was like a Quaalude popping redneck, and he was super driven and truly like really talented. And the story of them making that video is incredible because they did hire him because his reel was so bad, and they wanted just to make the shittiest music video ever. And so, but Sam was so ambitious and driven that he went out to like strip clubs and got the girls and their cheerleaders, and then went to a Nirvana show and got the audience, and put this video together. And it's got like fire and all that kind of 90s shit in
Oh
it.
yeah.
And evidently Kurt hated him because he is, I love him, but he's a real personality. And either you love him or you hate him. Kurt hated him. And so when he's like spitting at the camera, he's actually
It's
spitting
real.
at Sam.
Oh.
And that was the thing about it, because I remember seeing that video when I was whatever in my early 20s, and I was just like, I'd never seen anything like it, because there was such kind of anger and aggression, and the moshing at the end was all real. But the story was that the shoot was a nightmare. The kids were really getting like impatient and wanted to break shit. Kurt hated Sam. It was all falling apart, and at the in the whole shoot, the kids were like, can we fucking, can we mosh? Can we get out? Like, can we just go? And finally he's like, fuck it, do whatever you want. He was done. And all of a sudden the kids started like thrashing the set, and he was like, oh my God. And
This
he
is the
picked up the
video.
camera, and you know, the rest is history for everybody, but it's
Wild.
I don't know. It was a really interesting story. Anyway, so
Is it-
I worked for this guy, and he was also a photographer. So I was learning filmmaking and photography, and a lot of kids from Art Center would come down and print in his dark room and work, you know, well, print his prints. And they became my friends, and they were kind of my art school. And I would sit there and wait for like the plumber to come and read his art book library that every music video had in the 90s, every director had in the 90s, because they would just rip off like, like they'd get an art book and just like, oh, I'm going to do this idea.
yeah.
Anyway, so that's how I kind of got into it. And I started directing music videos. I started taking pictures simultaneously. And the thing about filmmaking that's so hard is you need money, and you need a crew, and you need to assemble a team of people. And so it's prohibitive to making shit frequently. And the great thing about photography, or at least the thing I always loved about it was so immediate. I could pick up my camera, I could go outside, I could take a picture or hang out with a friend and make something, as opposed to waiting for someone to give me the money to make a music video. And, you know, I was still learning. I couldn't really write at the time. I didn't really have a story to tell. So I was kind of learning both, but yeah, eventually I did it. This was like the early 2000s. And my last video I did was for Kylie Minogue. And I shot everything on 35 millimeter film, but against green. So I was building out this whole world of fluorescent lights and neon lights. And um, she was great. She was lovely, but it was just a real beat down. At the end of that, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I put my portfolio together and started like going to New York and Europe and trying to build a photo career.
Okay, so that was the shift. it's
Yeah.
it's so hard. I mean, it's one of those things. I remember, you know, I grew up in Southern California in the suburbs out in the Inland Empire, and like was obsessed with film from an early age. I had an older cousin who sort of taught me, you know, sort of filmmaking 101, or at least just film appreciation 101 as a young kid. And I think there are a lot of that sort of world of experiencing the 80s and the VHS, you know, and the rise of the video store kind of obsessed kid, and it would just throw myself into that, and then always was looking for a way in, but it's an almost impossible task. I remember I had a cousin whose the family friend was a gaffer, and I remember he like gave me a script for that show Hunter. Do you remember the show? Like it was like a police procedural, like from the 80s. And I was like, what? This is a real script from Hunter? You know, like I was the closest to Hollywood I think I ever got. So I got a shooting script from an episode of Hunter in like 1987. But I was obsessed. It was just like, well, this is real.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I wrote I remember I was also obsessed with comic books. I remember I wrote whatever my approximation in like fourth grade of a script for or a treatment for Spider-Man. It's like, why is nobody making a Spider-Man movie? I think it was, post 89 Batman. And it was like, we need to have, there should be a Spider-Man movie. And I wrote like, in all caps, like in our early word processor. I was like, this should be our thing. But through high school and then into my 20s, just quickly get like disabused of that idea that anyone can make movies. It's like, no, this is like a horrendous like system of like
Yeah.
there's millions of people just trying to serve coffee on a film set, let alone
Yeah.
actually be the one, realize like, oh, okay, this is just the 1,000-mile drudge through shit to just do anything near this thing. You're like, this is not worth that. I mean, it's a movie. I don't know. Like everybody makes those
Yeah.
dumb movies, are like those the hardest working, most grunt, going to war kind of stories. And you're like, and you made, whatever, Deuce
Well,
Bigelow,
that's
Male
a,
Gigolo, and you're like, fuck that. You had to eat shit for 6 years to make that piece of shit. Like, fuck this.
I know, man. That's the thing is like if it's not something that you really care about, or I mean, it doesn't even have to be like crazy quality, but you just have to care about it. And if you don't really care about it and you're not happy with it when you're done, it's too hard. It's too
Yeah.
hard to do it, you know?
Or
That's
yeah,
that's the,
you really have to have that insane megalomania kind of like narcissistic psychopath, sociopath kind of like just mentality of like, you know what I mean? They realize why those
yeah.
people are the ones doing it, because there's no other way to do it. You know what I mean? It feels like, anybody with any kind of sense of self-respect would would just say fuck this and walk away. It's,
Well, you think about it, like you think about the history of Hollywood, like the whole town, it's like, 100 plus years of the same story of, people coming out to chase a dream. And it's just been happening for 100
oh,
years.
right. Yeah. I mean,
And
there's,
it's
yeah.
trippy when you think about it in that way.
Yeah, like All About Eve has been remade
Y-
every 20
Yeah.
years, and it's the same story, and it's recontext, new context, but it's the same fucking story. What was the Bradley Cooper version of it?
Yeah. Stars Born, right?
Star is Born, exactly. Yeah, not All About Eve, Star is Born, but yeah.
Yeah.
The so were you when you first moved into LA at that time? I mean, there must have been incredible though too. I mean, were you going to see shows and going to see movies? Were you
Yeah.
like plugged into like what was it like for you, like first discovering LA and kind of the films and kind of getting involved in the culture of that side of stuff?
It's just, it was amazing. I had these friends from Art Center that kind of showed me the ropes about, yeah, I don't know, what, like being an artist or whatever. Like it was, instead of going to like art school, that was kind of my art school. And there was a network of really interesting people. There was a really incredible writer named Benjamin Weissman who was in the Eagle or Echo Park before Echo Park was Echo Park now, and like he would have these writing salons, and people would come over, and my photographer friends would it's kind of how I learned to write. Would have this writing salon where most of the people in there weren't even writers, but they were other artists, but they were just kind of developing their their art muscles in writing. Everybody reads a lot, but to get something down the page, and it was a salon. You'd sit around and you'd read a couple stories each week, and people would critique on it. But and I didn't really know anything, but I look around, and I remember I went to see a show at Mocha with like Laura Owens. I was like, oh shit, she was in the writing salon. So there are all these interesting people doing that, and then yeah, and just like learning film and studying film, um, learning how to be a photographer. And back in the 2000s, there were probably only half a dozen photographers in LA that would shoot for cool magazines or whatever, like Purple or European or ID. Um, and so it was really fun. It was, you're running around the city. The lights incredible. You're shooting interesting people, whatever, directors, celebrities, shooting personal projects. Yeah, it's a fucking blast. And the
So
city too, like this. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, I mean, you fell into kind of in a fashion sort of portrait world for a lot of media stuff that at that point, right? That was
Yeah, what's funny about that is that was really. I mean, I like fashion, I like clothes or whatever. Like but that wasn't really why I got into it. What I really, the reason I kind of started doing that was because I had this desire to be a filmmaker and tell stories that in taking pictures in fashion, you could kind of create a character and imply like a narrative and create a world, and as opposed to just like being a pure portrait photographer or landscape photographer. And so fashion kind of scratched that itch of storytelling and character building. So,
Mm, that's
um,
interesting.
but it,
Yeah.
but it gets, then you get into it and it has its own other set of problems, which is just, um, yeah.
It's it's wild. Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say so about just LA at that time, just running around and doing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about LA, it's still this way. Um, but what I think was different about, because I would go to New York a lot too, but I felt like uh, people are really supportive. Artists are really supportive of one another in LA. There's not really crazy competition or kind of gatekeeping about how you do things or who you know. There's always been a real great spirit of just kind of sharing and helping. And like I've met you guys, I met Kate and Laura. Like you meet all the people in our community, and everybody always seemed really down just to do good shit, to do fun shit.
LA in that weird way, has always been sort of characterized. But I feel like LA is in this weird sort of place where you can't ever really. There's no one thing. There's like
Yeah,
300 different versions of LA depending on what it is you're doing and what It's. I've always kind of gravitated to sort of the multi-ethnic sort of diversity and the sort of the working class. It was affordable, and there was
yeah,
everybody was making things. There was a fabrication sort of like industry of LA, that stuff that grew up the periphery around that filmmaking thing, because those machines were always churning productions and things. But so it was like you could get, your car reupholstered with like some of
yeah,
the best fabrics in the world, or you could get your film developed, or you could buy, any kind of like, media stuff or music instruments or all this other stuff. Just everything kind of had to be at hand locally, so there was this whole other kind of thing. If you were on the periphery of being a creative, it was affordable to make things, in some weird
yeah.
DIY kind of way of it.
Well, that's totally.
So I
I
like that.
mean, you're totally right. I mean, it's that aspect of LA has changed. I mean, it's expensive. Everything costs a lot.
But 20 years ago or 25 years ago,
20
that
years
wasn't
ago,
the case.
it was
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
what was always so funny, that people would talk shit. I remember, when we would tour, like, oh, fuck, LA sucks. And we're like, I remember like, yeah, like you can get a warehouse for like $500. Like, but
Oh,
yeah, but I'm not going to tell you. It was like, just keep saying, yeah,
yeah,
LA sucks. And that's when that was like the rise of Brooklyn and everything. Like, oh, Brooklyn's so
yeah,
cool. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
that shit's expensive. You got 18 roommates in a 2 bedroom,
And then they all figured it out, and then they all moved to LA.
yeah. And then it got expensive.
Yeah.
But for a while there was
Um,
a run of stuff where, yeah, I just felt like everybody was like in their 20s, just bopping about town, and everything was so affordable. And I was like, oh, this is insane.
yeah, I used to say like it was. I mean, I think it was really true. I can't back it up with any like data, but it felt really true that it was like one of the few massive cultural cities in America that you could live affordably. And it
Mm-hmm.
really, I feel like it was like that until, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, whatever it is. But
Yeah, things kind of went sideways, and
yeah,
it got a little crazier. But it was that post like 2008. I think when the financial sort of crash happened, everything
yeah,
went real low, and then from there it just shot up. It was that kind of thing where
yeah,
like it was already affordable, and then like the bottom fell out, and then it became a
yeah,
predatory sort of real estate market. But prior to that, it
yeah,
was relatively stable, or at least affordable.
yeah,
Um,
completely.
so in doing music videos and things, I mean, what were sort of your inspirations? I guess I was trying to get at that. Like, were you going to see films at the New Art and the Lemley, and who were your people? What was sort of inspiring you creatively around those early years?
Yeah, I feel like I mean, because I didn't go to film school, I just watched films obsessively. I mean, I think everybody kind of has their own kind of similar film school, where you discover Godard, you discover Tarkovsky, you discover Derek Jarman, you discover all these singular filmmakers, and it's the same thing with music. You get so into like their work and kind of work your way through it all. I had like the real luxury or privilege or whatever of being around the Directors Bureau, which from 2003 to, I don't know, 2013 was kind of the coolest thing in town in terms of like music videos and filmmakers, and specifically being around like Mike Mills and Roman Coppola. Like Mike's like a huge influence to me. So yeah, as much as films, it wasn't until I started like being around him and seeing how he like watched a lot of films and had a incredible knowledge of films, but how he was able to personalize it and create his voice that's really unique. And then you go through that thing where you're like, oh, I want to do that. You look around at what other people are doing and try to kind of emulate that as you learn, and then you eventually get to the place where you realize that like, oh, I have to really hunker down and figure out like what I have to say and like what's the what's my story to tell, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that like that my whatever that football horror film came. It was like I was in that writing class and I had this experience when I was in that writing salon where the first two things I wrote, I really loved Dennis Johnson, the author,
Yeah.
and I was trying to like write some horrible Jesus son kind of thing, and it was so bad. And then finally, it was so embarrassing because people would have to read it and like give you notes about it, and I knew it sucked, and they knew it sucked, but they were really nice people. But the last thing I wrote was just literally a day in the life of playing football in college and how like, absurd and insane it was if you just kind of lay it out like a grocery list. Like today I woke up and I did this and this and this. And it's, from a stepping back from that and outside of it, you're like, that was fucking crazy and so weird. But anyway, so I turned it in. Everybody's like, that's genius. Or not genius, but they're like, that's so good. What a breakthrough. And they're like, how did you come up with that? I'm like, oh, I just wrote exactly what happened on a typical day. And that was kind of the process where I realized, oh, okay, well, maybe my own personal story has value or, whatever, like figuring out what the voice is or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, tell me more about making the film. I feel like I missed this part of of what was happening. I know we had talked a little bit about you had been writing the script, and then
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the script. I had an idea. I never really had an idea until later. I got back into directing and started directing whatever films with Kate and Laura and doing stuff for Rodarte and doing music videos and doing commercials. And then I realized like now it's time to write a script, and I finally had a story. And yeah, I was trying to write it with a couple of people, but it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So then I decided I was going to write it myself, and I just kind of taught myself to write. My method of doing that was to take a movie that I really really love. Like I took a Coen Brothers movie, and they're notoriously like some of the greatest writers ever, and then I would like,
start
and I
small.
knew,
Yeah, go for something
yeah,
small.
exactly.
Right? Like, yeah, Coen Brothers script, sure. Yeah.
I figured like why do it with like a really shitty script or a mediocre script? Like why not find the fucking best script with the best movie version of it? And so I would like watch a scene. I'd read a scene, then watch a scene, then I read the scene, then I watch the scene. Anyway, so I started learning that like a screenplay is different than like prose or a novel or a short story. It's basically like a blueprint that that functions. It's a piece of writing that functions as a blueprint to tell a story, but also to tell a crew what to do and where to go. And there's a real kind of utilitarian aspect to a screenplay. I mean, it also has to be really good and it has to be great characters and great story, all that stuff. But anyway, so I figured out how to write it, and then uh, got a producer, we got financing, um, and then WME got it, and Danny Gabai was at Vice, and WME gave it to Vice, so then Vice optioned it. Um, it's a long, boring story. There's like 10,000 of these in
Of
Hollywood,
course. Yeah.
but anyway, it all kind of stalled out with COVID. So,
Okay.
and I think at that moment, like COVID changed so much about the film industry and the film business. Kind of accelerate. There were things that were trending in a certain direction, like people watching movies at home. Streaming was growing, but once COVID happened and everybody was locked down, that just flipped the switch, and from there on, it's more streaming than actually going to a theater. So I think the film industry is it's just in like a crazy bit of transition at the moment.
Yeah, it seems really strange. I mean, that's sort of, that happened with the music industry as well, with like the idea of streaming and, sort of devaluation of actual albums or so. It became a
Yeah,
thing. We're like, oh, we just get this free all the time, right? Just turn on the spigot.
yeah,
It's like, but the
yeah,
people making that don't get it, aren't getting paid. Like, so how are they going to be
yeah.
able to afford to make the thing? And someone's getting paid, but it's not the creators of the thing. And then that seems to have now impacted the film industry and,
It's pretty
TV and
fucking
everything else. So
nefarious.
there's no royalties. There's no real
Yeah,
infrastructure or financing a thing. It's sort of, yeah,
it's a
all behind
really weird
doors.
time. It's kind of, I mean, it is nefarious because like someone's making money,
Yeah,
right?
people are still spending money, but it's
Yeah,
not in the traditional sort of sense of even like commercial television, where you'd like watch an ad and then you get how things are paid for. It's like now with streaming, it's all, no one knows how many views anything has. You don't know if you've worked on the biggest thing or the shittiest thing. Like I guess I just know from like the music side of stuff. Like we'll
yeah.
have a song that's licensed to a thing, or synced, and we're like, was that good? Like, did anybody see it? Does it even exist? Like, I don't even know. Like, there it is. Like, okay.
And
It's like,
you guys get paid
once. Just one.
once.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference, at least from the music side, is where it used to be if you had a song in a film and then it got played on TV, then there was like TV rights, and if you got if you had, or even if you did a theme song for a TV show and it was played every week and then went into syndication and played 5 times a week or this kind of thing, there'd be, you'd hear stories of people. They're like, oh well, that's how I paid for this house. I had
Right.
one song on a thing or a song on a soundtrack. Like Nick Lowe had a song on the Bodyguard soundtrack,
Mhm.
and Whitney Houston's song was the hit, but his song was the like 12th song on a CD, the soundtrack CD. He bought a house and a tour bus and paid, and basically financed his life for 10 years of having one song
Yeah.
on a soundtrack. And that just sort of stuff doesn't exist anymore,
So
So,
you guys get paid. You get paid just up front. You get a fee, and that's it.
yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
And then
do you
and
get?
no
Do you
one
get?
knows how it doesn't matter how many times it's been seen, how big the movie is, what it is, and everything's kind of set up now to when if you sync a song, it's for in perpetuity and it's for the universe. It's basically any forms of media forever for the rest of life, and that was always a different thing too. But where you could have sort of carve outs, like, well, for this area, or it's for that area, it's for this medium or for that medium, but no, it's not like that.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, I'm like kind of the eternal optimist, or I try to be. But it's so frustrating, and I think it's so dysfunctional to like society that the creators and the creative people aren't getting fairly compensated for what they do. It's like it's a deeper it's a there's deeper consequences for like society and the culture. I know I'm like preaching to the choir, and it's just
Yeah.
like but it is it's a real dangerous proposition.
Yeah, well, I just think it's just changed, especially Los Angeles, Southern California, so much. You know what I mean? I think there was always that sort of thing, and there's still those people that exist. Where like you could be a TV writer. You wrote on 4 seasons of Murphy Brown, and again, you could live. You could live off the
Yeah.
residuals and the royalties or whatever, or some show that, I wrote 3 episodes of Facts of Life and this is my
Yeah.
Mercedes Benz. Those were the
Right.
people that populated Los Angeles. You'd go to
Right.
you go to a restaurant and you'd be sitting next to somebody. You're like, I've never seen this person in my life. You're like, oh yeah, they're a millionaire. They own the rights to Looney
Right.
Tunes cartoons or something, or some like
Right.
animation rights. You're like, oh, okay. That was sort of the world I remember kind of moving into Hollywood and just like, what is going on? Like all these people seem to be wealthy and I don't know how it all happens, but I think all of those little, like those things have all been consolidated, or the if you were to aspire to go into like, oh yeah, I want to be somewhere in the middle of this kind of world of stuff. It's like you either like own the network or you're an
Right.
intern.
Right.
Because everybody in the middle is sort of being paid like one or the other. You're either,
Yeah. I heard someone say the other day, he's not even in the business, but he's like I don't know, like I don't know, like a business person observing Hollywood at a distance. And he's like, it's always been an interesting town and a tough place to like make a living. But it used to be like 20 to 25% of the people did really well or did well and they had like
mm-hmm.
a good life, like we were
Sure.
talking about. And 75% of the people were like kind of struggling or trying to get to that point. but I feel like, I think he said now it's like 90, 95% of the people are struggling, and there's 5 to 10% that are doing really well.
That
And so you
sounds
can
about
see
right.
that kind of, yeah, you can see that kind of evolution.
I mean, to me, that's also just, it's sort of the canary in the coal mine, I think, in some ways too. I think that's sort of the way rest of America and the world is going. This is the game, the trajectory that
Yeah.
ultimately this hyper 1%er, sort of
Yeah.
financing and business structures are going at. So it's something that I think we're seeing it here first, and it's like, well, and everybody says, well, you guys are Hollywood people. You just be lucky, you have oranges and sunshine and or
Right.
whatever, it's like, why
Right.
you have nothing to complain about, and then you're like, well, it's coming for you too. All
Yeah.
of this stuff kind of spirals down, but
It's unsustainable. You know what I mean?
I
Like
guess that's it. Right. Yeah.
it's
That's
just
always
unsustainable.
that's always how I felt about streaming is like, there's a reason like libraries aren't for profit, because ultimately
Right.
these streaming things are just libraries. Like you go to any library and it's always a public utility. It seemed like water or this kind of thing, which again you pay for, but um,
Well,
you know,
I mean, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, obviously there's like independent cinema being made in America, but it's harder and harder. But like
but where's
the
it
independent,
seen? Where do you see it on YouTube?
well, that's the thing. Like, where do you see it? And that's why people are investing in it. You know,
Right. Yeah.
I've pitched to Richard Linklater's producer, about it. I have a couple of movies I've written. I have one really small one that I could make it really cheap, and I have a larger one that that I had with Vice. And I told him about the small one, and it's like a small like drama thriller, and he's like, "Yeah, I just don't know where anyone would see that." And like you're right. So if there's no space to see it, then the whole business of investing in films is going away, because those people who are putting their money into it, they don't know how they're going to get their money back anymore. I mean, it used to be that you would have like a small, you'd have an independent script that's really good. You'd get a good actor. You'd make it for whatever, 2, 3 million bucks, $2 million. If it's a good idea, it goes to Sundance and it sells, and everybody makes their money back. But
Yeah. Well, yeah,
because,
it'll do an art house run, and then you'll do a
yeah,
DVD or physical media run, and then
yeah,
and then you do the rights to streaming or cable or this. You know what I mean? There was like tiers and
yeah,
places where everybody could get a cut of money, because ultimately people that saw it would spend $5 to $25 to consume the media. But now that's all gone away. With that thing of like, oh, is it free? No, okay, I don't want to
yeah,
watch it.
yeah,
There's these ideas of like free media, and I don't know. Ultimately, I think the IP always wins the day. At the end of the day, the ideas win, because even with I think that's sort of what we're seeing now, and I think will continue to happen, is the quality of media, whether it's music or film or anything TV. If you don't have good ideas, they're not gonna,
yeah,
no one's gonna watch it. I mean, the garbage, like reality TV show, can only hold you for so long, and that's when, and ultimately, you know, I feel it's like Reels and TikTok are like the biggest competition, and that's when you want to talk about like quality of media or whatever this is, it's like weird
yeah.
reality competitions things are a guy going around giving $200 to poor people is like the bigger entertainment, the biggest threat to you know what I mean, to
Right,
late night TV. Like Jimmy Fallon can't get an audience because Mr. Beast is out here betting people $500 they can't jump off a roof.
right. Yeah, totally.
And,
But I mean, I think there's going to be because of that, there'll be a I don't know what the word is, like not necessarily a backlash, but a response to that, where I think, like you said, good ideas will rise through the noise, and like my kids will discover good film, your kids will, and there'll be, I believe that because the kids are all on TikTok, but I believe there's gonna be a good chunk of them that are gonna want to see something of quality, because it's like when you this is such a corny cliche, but like you're eating junk food all the time, and all of a sudden you have like a really delicious taco or whatever it is. For
mm-hmm.
the first time, you're like, oh my God, that's so good. Where can I get more of this? And I think the same thing's going to happen with music and film. So it's not going away. There's a current restructuring of I don't know, the industries, people's tastes, people like having to learn what's good, because
Yeah,
they've
yeah,
just
it's
been given a lot of fast food or junk food.
I know. It's interesting though. I think it does tie into things, and I know we're not going to, solve the world's problems here, contemplating our belly buttons about, how this all works and what's next. But I do think there is there's a sense of like media literacy and sort of the need and the demand and what the market will bear, right? That's sort of always,
Right.
let's just follow the money. And I think our generation, being fathers in this time, it really is our children's generation. The next, it's like, what will be cool? What are they going to be willing to part their money with? As they go out into the
Right.
world as young people and start making money, what will that expendable income be put to? What will they value in that world? Is
Right.
ultimately what we're talking about. It's that kind of stuff of like, when we were kids running around, we had an extra $5 in our pocket. We could go see a matinee of French foreign film. I'm like, whoa, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
How cool are we? Or
Mm-hmm.
just know that the cute girls liked movies in different languages. So, okay, so I had to save up some money and go see something with subtitles because those were the girls I wanted to date, wanted to see the things with
Right.
subtitles, or whatever. The motivation comes down to the thing.
Right.
So it's like, how are our kids going to impress their potential mates, and whatever that world
Yeah.
is going to look like, so much of that is what's basically what it's all driven on. So we'll
Well,
see.
I think there's this thing that like doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not bagging on TikTok or whatever, or social media, but there's like this is what all art and literature and film and all art since the beginning of time is, it speaks to what it is to be human. And I think that's never going to go away. And there's some social media clips that kind of flirt with things like that sometimes, but but there's a certain experience I think people have when they see art or see a movie or listen to music that speaks to what it is to be a human being on this planet, and it's a deeper um connection that you can get through disposable media. And
Yeah.
so I think that's I hope that's the thing that I mean, it's gonna last, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going
Something.
away. We just have to figure out a way to
I guess so. Yeah.
get
I mean,
paid to do it.
I think the whole vibe of like Netflix and chill was sort of the last sort of evolution of that sort of thing, like, oh, okay, it made it cool to be, that was part of your social sort of like those early 20s sort of life. Like, okay, we're going to put something on streaming and hang out. But what is that, does that still, is that even, that's probably in the past already. That's passe. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
think the rise of like dating apps, social media, quick, user generated content, all of the sort of things. I think, I don't know. I guess I want the bigger thesis I think that I'm crafting here, and again I don't know if this is the forum for it, but kids in their 20s trying to have sex, probably drives the majority of narrative
Yeah,
media,
completely.
narrative structure, whatever that is, like that sort of the drive of procreation and passing the genetic material down through the generations of things is probably what really drives all those things, those stories, and those, like you said, what is it to be human? What is this
Yeah,
whole thing like? And I think so much back to that time in my life, it was about film. It was about going to movies, and that's how you went
yeah,
on dates. Like, hey, you want to go get dinner in a movie?
yeah,
We'd go somewhere else, and yeah, I don't know what that looks like now.
yeah.
That's the question. I
I
think if someone can crack that, I think that might be where the financing will go towards whatever's
Yeah,
driving that media.
it's interesting. I'm watching my son go through it. He's always watched movies, but he watched Batman and stuff like that. And he's taking this course in college that he watches a movie Monday night. He's like, best course ever. And like, he's got this professor that loves movies, and he goes in and he watched God, what was it? He just watched. I actually haven't even seen this movie, but it's early Frank Capra film from the 30s. Anyway, he had this thing where he's like, it blew his mind. He's like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize that people have been telling stories this good. It's timeless. The characters are great. The stories are great. It could, if it came out today, it'd be a great movie. So my point is, it's like he's in this process of discovering movies that speak to what it is to be human, that tell good stories, that are relatable. I remember and he's wanting more of it. So I just think that's like a microcosm of like what I think other kids are going to do, and also like people don't. We need to talk more about like having fun. Like the world's in a fucking crazy place, and there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. But I think it's important for, especially in LA, like for us to have fun. Like I showed him Dazed and Confused,
Oh
and
yeah.
she had never said, and and it kind of made him sad. He goes, and I'm like, why are you sad? And he said, because
Where's my water tower? Where's my
yeah, he's
yeah.
like, well, you guys used to really do that, and like yeah,
Oh
and
God,
I,
yeah.
I,
It's so much
I
worse. That was pretty.
yeah,
That was a tame night. Yeah.
completely, like with no phones, like filming every fucking stupid thing you say.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what my point is, except that like wouldn't it be great if like moving forward there was more of a an attitude of cultivating like gatherings that are like fun. I don't know. I want kids to be able to live like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know. I know. I think about it all the time. Just that. Yeah. I feel like I was part of that, like that ET generation. Like everybody get on your bikes and just go right around. But
Yeah.
but with that tube came, I was hit by a car twice in my
Yeah.
life
Me too.
with skateboarding and riding bikes. And,
Yeah.
I'm been bionically put back together from this life of sort of just running around wild on the streets. So, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I would never wish that for my children, you know what I mean?
Totally.
But at the same time, riding through downtown LA with a 12 pack of beers, with your friends at 2 a.m. in the morning is, you know,
Kind of great.
it was a time and a place,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want my kids to do that either. I remember,
Yeah.
definitely skateboarding all over the place as a teenager. And at one point cops came up to us, were like, do you know where you are? Like, this is, you're a bunch of white kids from the suburbs, like in a
Yeah.
really bad part of town. Like I'm not, we thought we were getting busted for skateboarding. He's like, I don't give a
Right.
fuck about you skateboarding. I would give a fuck when I'm back here in 10 minutes when you guys have all been stabbed and
Oh my
robbed.
God.
Like, so get the fuck out of here. I don't care.
Don't be an idiot.
Yeah. I don't care. You're scratching the marble in front of this building with your skateboard. It's like, I just want to pick up your brains off the floor and you've been shot. I'm like, oh fuck. Okay. So I think that's the thing. Yeah. We didn't know as much about the world
Yeah.
then, and so maybe it was always a dangerous place, but we just didn't know it. We got
Right.
lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's next? What are you working on? What are you working on now? How are things sitting?
It's good. It's good. Like I have got 2 films I'm still hustling, looking for financing for. I'm going to do an exhibition I'm going to curate a show in April of just a group show of photography that I'm excited about. I mean, kind of. I have no ambition to be like a curator. Like that's not what I do. And I'm having it at my friend's space, and he isn't trying to be like a art world art gallery. But I think there's value in getting a bunch of artists together and showing work and selling some work. And I think now in LA, there's so many good, so many people need help. There's so many places to take the sales and help the community back, help the community with. But just like, yeah, like I don't know. I guess this is what I'm trying to. I mean, I'm I'm just trying to be optimistic, and I think that there's, in line with everything we're saying, I think there's value in us getting together and having a, like the goal of the show is not to be like to try to be a art curator, but rather gather people together and have fun, show work, sell work. Because you ask about LA back in the day, or even like New York. How many? There were so many great um, just shows and gatherings. I mean, the smell was like that,
Oh yeah.
and I don't know. I think that was my kind of thing with LA. LA after COVID is. It's I don't know. We've lived through a series of just kind of gut punches from COVID to the writer's strike to the fires. I don't know. I think it's just I think there's value in being like hopeful and us all getting back together and sharing experiences together. And I think that's kind of my ambition with curating this thing.
Oh, that's great. Where's it going to be at? Can you
Do you remember Ben Seeley at Palm Grove Social?
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you guys. He's built out a space down there, and he's like a dear friend, and he's been having things down there that is kind of cultivated a really good community of people that come together and kind of with the same ideas. Like, let's get together and have a nice time and see each other
Awesome.
in person.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I'll put a link up in the show notes
Okay.
if it's online. If you have the info.
Yeah.
That's
Great.
fantastic. And, you know what? One thing I was just thinking before we go, there's so much about, as a photographer, I think so much about your work is, there's the work for commission and, you're obviously, you shot many celebrities and for publications, but you also always had your sort of personal creative work. Like, how did you balance, how did you know, or how were you able to sort of like make that work for you, like between like the for hire and then the personal work, and how did that relate to each other?
Um, well, I mean, it kind of like, I think it's just being really excited by ideas. Like, I'm not the kind of person that like walks around with a camera on my neck and photographs everything like Ed Templeton, which I wish I was. Like, that fucking shit's amazing. I just have never been that person. So I'm always kind of, I always think about an idea. Like, I'll formulate an idea, or I'll figure out what I'm trying to say and then figure out the best way to kind of take pictures to express it, as opposed to like, relying on the purely on the documentary quality of photography. Um, so it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, it's the same with like an idea for a movie or a short film or a music video or a photo project. It's kind of that thing I was saying earlier, is like looking inside and figuring out like who I am, what can I share with the world that speaks to my experience, and then just kind of coming up with a framework, a photo framework for that. Yeah, and just like seeing other work that really inspires you. And I get real bored with photography. Um, I just so I always have to figure out a way to like try, especially with my personal work, is like try to do something different. Like, I remember I did a project once where I first started shooting landscapes with a 4x5 camera, and it's so considered. You got the hood, you walk out, you place it here, you move a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and I did that, and I really liked that. But then I guess the next time I really set out to do like a fully immerse myself in a project, I made a rule to like shoot all my landscapes vertically, just to with a 35 millimeter camera, just to see what that how that works. But then I saw Robert Adams as a photographer that I really really love, and it wasn't a totally original idea, but he kind of did the same thing. He went from like shooting like large format horizontal landscapes to eventually just like walking around with a 35, going up for walks with a 35 millimeter camera and shooting it all vertically, which I thought was like, I actually like those pictures better, because it just felt more like magical and emotional. But anyway, I don't know. I guess I like to think of what I'm trying to say and then try to figure out a language to go execute it. And that, I mean, that's kind of what you do with like that goes across like film work, photo work, even commercial work to a certain extent. If you're so lucky that like they actually listen to your point of
yeah,
view.
yeah, but yeah, I love that idea of it kind of being it's conceptual. Like, you have the not necessarily the desired outcome, but sort of the set of circumstances that you're looking to experiment with. Like, what would it look like if? I think that kind
Yeah,
of happens a lot. Or like, it's a way of going about making music as well, right? It's like, I want to try something with this, sound. Like, what would happen if I do X, Y, Z and put this together in that way and sort of document that process of sort of finding those things. So it's not necessarily conceptual only, but it's definitely not candid. But there's this
right.
type of experimental sort of process oriented creative decisions that happen that kind of take you to the final product.
Well, it's kind of the same thing that you and Andrea did. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I felt like when I saw that the landscapes you guys did during COVID, right? Like
Oh
those,
yeah.
and the music. It's um I don't know. I really related to that because like a large part of what I love to do. We talked about this, like drive around LA at certain times of day, with certain light, and look at the landscape, and it's so inspiring. So that's always something that like I really just hits me deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's definitely the funny part of LA too, is it's just so big and everyone's got a
Yeah.
car and you can kind of just, you see the world from your car. most of the time being in Southern California, there's a whole life that in every single little car that's out there, and everywhere you go, you have your almost, I think we don't think about it enough as like the frame, like as a photographer, you're constantly aware of what the frame is. And I think those cars, or being a kid growing up here, is looking at the backseat window, like it's already framed. Everything's there. The landscapes,
and
the
crazy
houses,
light,
the people.
And the way the light hits all the different boxes and landscapes.
Yeah, it's
great.
Wild. Awesome, Todd. Okay, well, thanks. I threw you a curveball right at the end. I was like, wait a second, we didn't even talk about personal work and professional work. Right, yeah. Incredible. Wow. Well, I know we could do this for hours, but thank you for coming on. And and then do you want people to follow you on Instagram? Do you post most of the stuff there? What's
it's basically my only social media thing is Instagram. So
what's the handle on there for everyone?
It's Todd TODDC Cole. So TODDCCOLE.
Cool. 2 C's.
Yeah, my middle name is Christopher, so it's just my that's only the name available, I guess.
Todd C. Cole at Instagram. Yeah. I know. I love that. I've seen like kids like, how did you you're so old, you got your name at Gmail? Yeah. Like how did you do that? Like, well, I was just there when that's how old I am. I bet that's
there for the jump.
That's like, tell me you're in your 40s or 50s without telling me you're in your well, there's no numbers after my name in my email.
I tried to be real low key about that for the longest time, and they just kept kind of stacking up. I'm like, okay, I can't fake it anymore. That's the era
I've earned it. Yeah, that's how you know. Totally. We're the first generation that won't have to have a number, that didn't have to have a number after our handles on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sacred.
Yeah. All right, Todd. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was so fun. It's good to see you.
Yes, Todd Cole. There he is. Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd, for jumping on and for chatting it up. Everybody go to toddcolephoto.com. You can also go to his Instagram. It's just Todd Cole, 2 D's and 2 C's. Todd C. Cole, I guess. TODDCCOLE. And you can find Todd Cole there, and toddcolephoto.com to see all the beautiful photos of all the beautiful people that he shot, not including yours truly. Thank goodness. My gray puffy face is not plastered out there for everyone to see. So yeah, thanks everybody. Remember distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Go Unions. And also Isotope. Make sure you go to Isotope. Check them out, isotope.com. Go there. Buy cool stuff. Do cool things. Be cool people. All right. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. Go see shows. Give artists money. Bye.
Of course, if you're good at football in Texas, you get like piles of that.